Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Dee.
We are finding healing after leaving a cult.
We will be discussing abuse and personal experience with the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental churches.
Trigger warning. This podcast may contain descriptions of various forms of abuse. Please take care for your safety and well-being while you are listening.
If the content becomes too much for you to handle, please turn this off. We hope to expose harmful teachings that lead to and justify abuse,
with the hope that those that are experiencing abuse can find support and escape from it.
So let's kind of introduce to our listeners how we, started into the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental, arenas. So we'll start with you, Marcy. So tell me a little bit about when did y'all get started in the ATI, IBLP?
Okay. My parents attended their basic and advanced seminars, and they heard that they were starting a homeschooling program. So they applied for the first year that they would be running this homeschooling program. And that was the pilot program. We got in the second year because I was too young. So in first grade, they let us in. So from 6 years old.
Okay. So for your homeschool education, did you mostly do the ATI curriculum, or did y'all do other things?
It was a combo. So the primary homeschooling curriculum was what they called wisdom booklets. Mm-hmm. And so you could go through these wisdom booklets as fast as you wanted or as slow as you wanted. And there were 52 of them. We would use that primarily, and it had different sections that you could use. My mom liked math and science and those basic things, but my mom added things. So she would get math books for us to do according to our grade level, or science or history, so she added her own curriculum to it too.
Okay, cool. All right. So I know when my family was into it, the homeschool conventions were the big thing. So did y'all ever do the homeschool conventions?
Yes, my parents tried to go about every other year, every second year. At the beginning, they were not in Knoxville. So for the majority of ATI's existence, they used a college campus in Knoxville, Tennessee, that could handle thousands of people. So they went to a few in Oklahoma City or random places like that. But when it moved to Knoxville, that's where we would go every other summer. I could start going at 12 with the program. Later, they moved that to whole families coming, but at the beginning, it was just 12 and above. And they did require the 12-year-olds to have already gone through the basic and advanced seminar before we could. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you and I met at headquarters. So tell me a little bit about when did you come to headquarters and how long did you stay?
Okay. I think I went to headquarters in 99. So headquarters was exclusive. You had to be invited in some way, shape, or form to be able to serve there. You didn't get paid, but you had to be invited to go. So I went to one of their programs called Excel that was for young girls. It was kind of like a finishing school almost. Yeah. You Bible studies and how to do tea parties and decorate cakes and be a biblical wife.
All the things you need when,
all the things that you need to survive in this world. So I went to that, and I got noticed by the director there, and he called it and invited me to go to work at headquarters. And so I went up in January of 99, I think. And I stayed 4 years there till 2003. And I worked in various departments, just depending on the need.
Yeah. All right. And then, so when you were done with headquarters, what did you do?
So toward the end of that headquarters stint, I helped start one of their programs called Verity. I was the registration person for that. And some things happened there that made me realize that there was a dark side to the program. I had already started feeling like a lot of their requirements and their standards and things like that weren't real conducive to life. But I saw the dark side, and I saw people lying, and I saw people being sent home or getting in trouble. It was a mess. And so that kind of started my walk out of it. And so when I came home, I left and I came home, and I tried to finish their college program through Verity. When I came home, that didn't work. And I ended up starting to work just outside the home as a receptionist after that, and went through a deep, dark time of trying to figure things out
Yeah.
because everything I'd been taught from 6 years old on, wasn't necessarily true. It
Right.
didn't work in real life.
Right. So, as far as like churches, what kind of churches did you and your family attend?
So I was raised Southern Baptist. We were there every time the doors were open. Um, Involved in all kinds of service projects. I served in the church since I was 12. And then when I came back from headquarters, my family had started attending a fundamental church. And so I went to that for a while as a young adult. But as I worked out of some of those cult teachings more and more and more, I saw cracks in the fundamental church too and how they were enabling that.
Mhm.
And so I went to a more liberal church that was more just Bible believing as a young adult.
Okay. When would you say like you like left the cults? And we say cults because the teachings were indoctrinations.
Yes.
It was definitely one of those things where you had to follow the rules or you were ostracized. So we'll get
Mhm.
more detail, as the episodes go on, and
Yes.
we'll tell you all about the culty ways we were
All about
raised.
it. Some really fun stories with that.
Yeah. So when would you say like you got out of the whole cult?
If I left headquarters in 2003, I think that I was fully out of it probably by 2005, at least mentally and physically enough to start making my own decisions.
Mhm.
Of course, that has been it's a slow process. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
yeah.
kind of like the beginning of the end, right? Like,
Yes. Yes. I
yeah.
mean, even now, and it's been 15 years, I'd have to count that up. 15 years, I still find myself believing, like running some of their lies through my mind and having to say, whoa, stop, not true.
Right.
Rewrite that in your brain.
Right. Yeah. I can totally relate to that.
So tell me a little bit how you got into ATI and how your family kind of worked into that. When did you start?
Um, okay, so I have to kind of go back a little bit. My family was raised Catholic. Like I was raised Catholic. And then my mom was born again Christian. Like I guess I was 12 maybe
Okay.
when that happened. And so we transitioned from Catholicism to Southern Baptist.
Hmm.
And then my mom found homeschooling, and my brother's 9 years younger than I am,
Hmm.
and she decided that she wanted to homeschool him, and I was going into high school that year,
Hmm.
and I had a terrible experience in my 8th grade year, and I did not want to go to an all-girls Catholic high school. And so I was like, "Well, mom, why don't you just homeschool me?" So, because I just did not want to do the high school thing. And so I was homeschooled for my high school years. We tried a Becca at first, and I was like, this is just like going to school. What is the point in homeschooling if I'm just going to sit in front of videos all day?
Yes.
And and then I basically studied for the ACT, studied for the GED, and then I had moved out when I was 17 years old. And about that time period is when my parents found ATI, IBLP. I believe they had gone to a basic, what is that? The basic
Basic
principles.
seminar.
Yeah, the
Hmm.
basic seminar. Then while I was living with a friend and her family, I decided to go into the Air Force so I could get college paid for. When Before went to basic, I decided to try and repair my relationship with my parents. My whole entire high school, thing was just a very contentious time for us. And
Hmm.
they required me to attend a basic seminar before I could come home. And so it was like, okay, well, this is what I have to do. I guess I can, entertain this. I really, at that time, I had, I guess, become born again,
Hmm.
Christian, prior to that, but I still struggled a lot. In order to come home, I was required to go to the basic seminar with my parents. We actually drove to Florida because that was the closest one before I went off to basic. And then I went to basic for the Air Force. And I struggled for many years with, just the whole like IBLP like way to do things versus reality, and being in the military and struggling with that, well, I should be doing this, and the way real life works in the Air Force was very, very hard. So I served in the Air Force for 4 years. And the last year that I was in the Air Force, I was stationed in Panama City, Florida. And somehow my parents had found out about this Bible Believers Baptist Church. And I started attending there, which they were very fundamental, King James only kind of church. That is how I got into the fundy world. So in 2001, I returned home when I was finished with my enlistment. And a couple months after that, there was this guy from the ATI that was there, and they would have like these meetings every quarter or something, and they would come and talk to my parents. And so I talked to him about, going to work up at headquarters, and shockingly, they invited me up. I was not your typical headquarters material. And so I in 2002, I guess it was a couple years later then, because it was a year later, because it was in 2002. So in 2002, I spent 3 months up at headquarters. And it was a very strange experience for me because I was very independent.
Well, that was frowned upon up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I went from being, on my own and I had even lived in South Korea for a year by myself,
Yes.
Obviously I was on a base with other people, but, I was responsible for myself. So it was a very different, like super hyper controlled environment that just was weird. It was a weird experience.
Yes. Agreed.
So I guess, after that, I came back home and I continued in the fundamental church route, and I got married to somebody in that church, and then I got divorced and started seeing the light. It was a couple years later that I just started being, like, well, that doesn't make any sense, and divorce is very frowned upon. So when you're in that, fundamental world and you get a divorce, it starts to make you question things.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah. Because you get varied reactions and usually not good ones.
Right.
I think I would add on my experience as far as the church and fundamental church. I said that I had gone to a less fundamental church for a while, but during that time that I walked away was when I married a non-believer, and that ended in divorce too. And after that was same thing. About a year after, kind of renewed faith and started going to church occasionally, still not on a consistent basis. But I think I would say my experience with divorce was a little bit different than yours. One, because I wasn't plugged into a church when it happened. So I had family support, but I also think that their support was because of domestic violence. And so it was justifiable in their mind versus, the church that doesn't see that as okay.
Right.
I didn't have to fight a lot of people. It was just family family was willing to get me out because they knew it was bad. So I didn't have to go through that with the church.
Yeah. My parents weren't really keen on divorce, but they saw what was happening and the lack of desire on my ex's part to change. So they were more willing to accept it, and the church was not. And so yeah, it was pretty much the rug was pulled up from underneath me. And I had the support of my family like you did, but all my other support was gone.
And that'll do it to you. I lost support of the church when I stopped with the fundamental views. And it lost me a lot of friends, and it lost me a lot of support. Thankfully, it wasn't wasn't over marriage, and I didn't have kids at the time.
So I think that is, basically what we wanted to cover in this like intro to the Umbrella Rebellion.
Okay.
So is there anything else you want to share with the listeners?
So the reason that we named Umbrella Rebellion what we did was because in ATI, they have an illustration of a patriarchal family. So it goes God, and then husband, and then mother, and then children. And it's illustrated with umbrellas. And if the one authority, like the husband, has a hole in his umbrella by sin or whatever, that sin goes down to the next, and to the next, and to the next. It doesn't provide for any individuality in that. And it sets up a really strict hierarchy of authority and where you fit into that, and also how God punishes you if you don't stay under that umbrella of authority. So if a daughter like me chooses to, let's say, listen to rock music or any one of the multiple things that were considered sin, then I would be out from underneath my dad's umbrella of authority, and God basically had free reign to do anything he wanted to me, all the way down to kill me for disobeying. So that's the umbrella of protection, which is why we decided for Umbrella Rebellion.
Yes, because that's a bunch of malarkey.
Yes, it is. It's a bunch of malarkey. I love it. That is a good word.
Oh man, maybe that should be our sign off. Well, that was just a bunch of malarkey.
Yes. I like it. Bunch of malarkey.
All right, so we want to just thank you for joining the Umbrella Rebellion, and we want to just encourage y'all, if you are struggling with some of the things that we talked about today, if you are questioning things that are going on around you that sound a little culty, or you are not sure if they are biblically correct, we encourage you to reach out to us on social media. We have a Facebook page. We also have a Facebook group, Umbrella Rebellion Official Support Group. You can find us on Instagram, Umbrella Rebellion, and we will be sharing some resources and some different programs and organizations that help people who are trying to escape from abuse and or heal from abuse. Thank you so much for listening. Come back next week and join the rebellion.